Hello. Welcome to Publishing is Dead. Yes, publishing as we know it, traditional publishing that's been going on for 250 years in Britain, is now finally coming to an end. And there are 4 reasons for that. The first reason is that traditional publishers are not interested in the second division. Now in this country, England, we have traditional football organised into a whole league, split up into different divisions, and there's first division and second division, third division. Traditional publishers only look at the top. They only look at the Premier League. They're looking for bestsellers. They're looking for the new Jeffrey Archer. They're looking for the new Stephen King. They're looking for the new Dan Brown. They're not interested in anybody further down the list because they want to go to literary lunches. They want to go to literature festivals and they want to be associated with bestsellers. Now let me tell you a story from the world of popular music. A few years ago, I remember reading about Elton John, an English singer who went to America in the early 70s and found great fame and success, earned himself a lot of money, sold a lot of records and was very well received. At about the same time, another British singer called Rod Stewart went over to America and found a certain amount of success but wasn't anything like as successful as Elton John. That's what the article said. And a few years after I read that, I found myself leafing through the Sunday Times Rich List, which tells us how much rich people in this country are worth. And sure enough, Elton John was right there near the front. And at that time, he'd earned himself a fortune of £175 million. Now he's still recording, he's still singing, so he's probably worth a lot more than that now. But that was then, 175 million. And as I leafed through the pages, I came to Rod Stewart. And sure enough, he was near the back. And he hadn't anything like the same amount of money. He was worth, according to Sunday Times, about £50 million at that time. But he's still singing, he's still recording, he's still going on tour, and he's probably earned himself a bit more since then. Well, what I realised was that even though Rod Stewart was in the second division, even though he wasn't anything like as rich or successful or had sold as many records as Elton John, he was still doing exactly what he wanted to do. He was a rock singer, he was making records, he was going out on tour, and as far as the youth of Britain were concerned, I'm sure if he gave them the opportunity, they'd be quite content to be Rod Stewart the singer as opposed to Elton John, even though it would mean being in the second division. Because you see, the secret is that writers, they want to write, they want to see their books out and published, but they're not really that interested in bestsellers. They want something else. Part 2. Most authors, in my opinion, want to earn a living. Now, this is no good for publishers because they earn money from books and they want to see lots and lots of books out there on the shelves being sold, making them money. But as far as authors are concerned, what they really want is to be authors, because would-be authors, many of them, have got other jobs at the moment. They're teachers, they're working in bookshops, they're working in the health profession, and what they really like to be able to do is give up that day job and earn a living as an author. Being rich would be nice, but writing books and seeing them published is the most important thing. Let me give you an example. Suppose an author was to do a deal with the devil, was to sell their soul, and the devil said to them, right, okay, you're a person who's writing books and you want to get them published. Okay, here's the deal. What's going to happen is that you're going to be very successful with your first book and earn £1 million. The second book, unfortunately, won't be that successful, and the third book won't do very well at all, so the publisher will get rid of you. Now this means that you'll have the money, but unfortunately Even though you can sit at home and write books because you've got enough money to do that, you will never be published again. Will you take that deal? I don't think many authors would take that. They'd have the money, they'd be able to write the books, but they wouldn't be able to communicate. They'd know that their books weren't getting out there, they weren't talking to an audience. What most authors want is to be full-time writers and see their books distributed, but they want a dialogue with people. They don't just want money in the bank. Now suppose the devil had a second option and said, all right then, you won't earn much money, but I'll make sure your books are published. I mean, how much are you earning now as a teacher, as a librarian, as a police person? And they would say, oh, 20,000, 30,000. And the devil said, all right, I'll make sure that you never earn less than that. But you'll write books, you'll see them published, and you'll never make a fortune. You'll never be rich, but you'll be a full-time professional writer. Will you take that option? I think that's a lot more tempting. I think a lot of authors would go for that. The idea of being a full-time professional writer, seeing your work in print, even though you'll never be rich, you'll never be a millionaire, that could be exactly what authors want. Unfortunately, that's no good for publishers, because if an author is only earning 20 or 30,000 a year, the publisher is earning even less. That's not at all for them, because books are the only way they make money, and that's the next point. Point 3. Most so-called professional writers don't just make a living from selling books. No, but publishers do. Publishers get manuscripts in, decide to print a book, distribute it, and then sell the copies. That's how they make their money. Professional authors have a lot more options. I'll give you an example. About a year ago, a crime writer we have in England called Ian Rankin made a programme for Channel 4 television. It was called Evil, a very good topic for a crime writer, and it was a very interesting programme. Ian Rankin went round and interviewed people, some from academic places, he talked to policemen and so on. And he probably made quite a bit of money from that TV series. In fact, it might be said that in that tax year, he probably made more money from his television work than he did from selling books. But that's no good to traditional publishers. They make nothing from that. They're probably very glad to see Ian Rankin on television, because they're hoping that as he gets his name more well known, he will sell more books, and that will do them good. But the TV series in itself is no help at all. And in fact there was more, because shortly afterwards Ian Rankin's books became turned into a television series called Rebus, the name of his hero detective. And that was very successful as well. That means more money in Ian Rankin's pocket. It doesn't help the publisher. Again, the publisher hopes that as Rebus becomes known, people will buy more books, which means more money for them. But the fact that Ian Rankin's books are on television doesn't put any cash into their pockets. Also, Ian Rankin, because he was on television, appeared on several chat shows, and he appeared as a pundit on late night arts programmes discussing other people's fiction. He would have got a small fee for doing that. Now, if you're a big name movie star like Mel Gibson or Bruce Willis, then appearing on television is a necessary thing for publicity, but actually it doesn't put much money in the bank. There's not enough money there probably to pay the bar bill when you get back to the hotel. But for a small-time author just starting out, those small fees can be a great contribution towards your wealth. And in fact, a person in the second division, as we mentioned before, earning £20,000 or £30,000 a year, will find their income very well supplemented by the odd occasional appearance on television or radio. That's not something that publishers really understand. Publishers understand books. They work with books. That's all they do. And because of that, the most important thing is they don't really understand the internet. Point 4. Traditional publishers don't understand the internet. Traditional publishers spend a lot of money on advertising. So they understand that if you want to promote a book, sometimes you have to put it out there for people to see. You have to put an advertisement in newspapers or magazines. Maybe you want a little trailer on the radio, or even, for the really big sellers, an advert on the television. So, when they see the internet, they think that this is just another way of advertising. It's like a moving billboard. They spend a lot of money on billboards and signs on buses and bus stops. Why not advertise on the internet? So most traditional publishers have established themselves a website, and they talk about the books that they're going to publish, and they talk about the authors, and they hope that people will then go into bookshops and buy the books. When they see would-be authors setting up their own websites, they're quite happy because they think that maybe these authors will attract a bit of attention, will get their names known, will have their work out there to a wide audience, and then they, the traditional publishers, can step in and offer these authors a contract, and of course the author will jump at it because they'll be dying to see their work in print and in bookshops. That's the way it's happened for 250 years. What they can't understand is that would-be authors are finding that not only are they becoming quite well known by establishing a website and promoting themselves through the internet, but also they can actually sell some books. If they go to a site like lulu.com, they can establish their book there where people can order them one at a time if necessary, and then have them delivered to their home. And the would-be author finds that then they can earn a little bit of money. If they become quite well known, the amount of money will go up. Let's suppose that they actually become fairly well known. They're starting to sell books on the internet. They're finding that they develop an income from the books that are on the internet. In that case, why do they need a publisher? The publisher would say, well, you need it for the prestige, for the coverage, for the publicity. Some publishers don't spend a lot of money on advertising and expect authors to do it all for themselves anyway, so that argument doesn't really hold. But you need it for the money, they'll say. But a lot of would-be authors are finding that if they could earn a living from the internet, then they wouldn't be tempted by the offer of a publishing contract from a traditional publisher, because traditional publishers are capricious. They offer a publishing contract this year, and next year they might be likely to drop it. It's not guaranteed. Whereas a carefully built reputation on the internet and small but steady sales can offer some sort of stability for the would-be author. So let's consider a situation not only where publishers have their websites, not only where Stephen King dabbles with the internet and publishes one of his new books on the web, but let's imagine that the new Stephen King, the person who's coming along to take his place, who's writing the sort of book which, in traditional publishing terms, might have sold millions of copies around the world. Suppose they decide that they're quite happy publishing on the internet, seeing their books in print, with a steady amount of sales and a small amount of publicity. Why would they turn to traditional publishing? And once that thought occurs, and once that becomes the norm, why then traditional publishing is dead. Let's get one thing clear. I don't write bestsellers. Now, if you're the kind of person who looks for the bestsellers when you go into the bookshop, if you look in the Sunday papers and you see what's number one and what's in the top 10 and what's selling very well, and you think, well, tens of thousands of other people have liked this book, maybe I will too. Maybe I'd better go for that. And if you hear the reviews on the radio and they all say the books are really good, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to give that a try, Well, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But be warned, the books I write are not bestsellers, and they're never going to be. For one simple reason, I write crime fiction, which isn't actually the number one selling item.